Hi, I'm Laura Darcy from LauraDarcyArt.com. Thanks for joining the channel today. This is the first video in a series of videos we're going to be doing creating with acrylic paint whimsical birds. Today's video is going to focus on this little guy right here. We're going to showcase a number of techniques. The other videos will showcase different types of techniques as we go. But this little guy will showcase using a palette knife. We're going to use stencils. We're going to use different blending techniques. We'll use water. We even use a wet paper towel. So, hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions or any comments, leave them below. I'll get back to you. I'll answer your questions. And I really hope you have a lot of fun. I hope you learn things that you can use in your own paintings. Hope to see you soon. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to just take a video of this and we can speed it up and move through this more quickly. If you can see on the canvas, I've sprayed it with water. It's gessoed, so it's sealed. It's ready to go. And this is always my starting point. I like to use a wet brush and a wet surface and just lay down some color and get satisfied with that first. So like I said, in the interest of time, we're just going to lay down some color. I'll show you how I introduce that onto the canvas, and then I'll probably speed this up so that you're not We've got our first layer of paint down here, and the next thing we're going to do is to spray it with water droplets. Just to show you one of the things I do with the water droplets is kind of pat them off. And we get some texture already just from some water and a layer of paint. So now I'm really going to let that dry. This is dry. I did use a hair dryer to speed up that process. We've got some great textures in here, but I don't have enough dark space to make me happy. I like to have a little more depth created from the contrast in the colors. So I have this nice bright area here and a bright area there. Probably going to preserve those, because if later on I want to put a bird in here, I don't want the bird to be already terribly dark. And I like to give the illusion of some light coming through here. So I'm actually using two of Golden Open products. One is Raw Sienna, and you can see that color here. That's the darker color. And then I'm going to add some burnt umber for a little more depth in that. So again, I'm going to do some applying of this. I'm going to tape it, video it, and then we can speed that up in the interest of time. But I'm going to start out with a little bit of dark color here. It just is blending beautifully. These open colors are... We're speeding the video up here, but I wanted to note that we're using a paper towel to apply paint. We've been doing that pretty regularly now, And you can see how beautiful the open colors are. They remain fairly moist so that you can blend the colors beautifully. So we dried this panel thoroughly, and I think that the colors remain pretty true to what we had before. And I sketched a bird in here so we could have a focal point. His beak is a little neat. And I like to have my birds have a little look on their face, if I can put it that way, or a little gesture in their body just to suggest some kind of interest, like what's the bird looking at, what's he thinking about. And so I have this one kind of looking up in that direction, and I'll try to provide something up here that lends itself to getting the bird to have something to look at. So then what I thought we would do is continue to enhance this painting. I like what the water droplets did on here. I think it's rather busy. What I'm wondering is what I want my bird to look like, because if it's going to be a focal point, I need to do it now, so then the other things that I'm doing in the painting kind of react to that. So I'm going to get some paint. I like the way that the bird is sitting in the light area, and I'll emphasize that with giving a little bit of a darker color inside certain parts of the bird, and then we'll go with that. Be right back. So I took the bird offline to paint him, and just wanted to get a general view of this little guy looking up somewhere. And then the next step is to add some interesting other features to provide context to what I was talking about before. What's he looking at? A little bit of more interest with the texture, and we'll start to do that with stencils and with paint. One of the techniques I wanted to really bring alive here is one of my favorites, and that is to take the the paint, and create texture simply because of moving through it with a palette knife. I think it's really quite interesting, some of the patterns you can make and some of the things that are going to develop. I'll get a little more color. And oh, by the way, I made the bird from green gold, and it is an open color, and burnt umber, and I started with just a little bit of raw sienna. So let's add a little more of that burnt umber and green gold down here at the bottom, and show our bird kind of sitting in the grass, and just move this up with my palette knife. Gives me a chance to add some darker images over here on the side, lighten up the bird onto a little bit of a stage there, and then create some interest down here. I'm not going to take it up too far because because I don't want to detract too much from the bird, but you can see that the palette knife moves the acrylic paint beautifully with a lot of fascinating, really. I love to see how it moves and it creates some really interesting shapes. I'll just put a little more down here as if he's sitting in a clearing, and maybe just a little more of the raw sienna to bring some light into that grass. It doesn't need to be real dark. Oh, there. So it's not dark, but I think its value is a nice contrast, especially between the bird and the light and the rest of this up here. So that's the bird sitting in the grass, and then let's add a little interest on the top part of the painting here. Okay, so I brought out one of my stencils, one of my favorite stencils, and just thinking about positioning here, as I've said a couple of times, less is more. And the other thing that we have to keep in mind when we're using these is these demarcation lines. You don't want those showing up. So I try to get full images. I'm going to put one just kind of peeking over into this area, and maybe half of that one. I'm thinking 3. So we're going to start, I like them kind of small. Maybe these are the 3 small ones I'll use right here. This one, and this one, with, I kind of would like more of a drop into this space here. So maybe we'll do something like this. Lots to think about here. I like to have it maybe a little lower into the frame, so maybe we will start here and see what we get. So I've mixed some of the raw sienna with a white, trying to go for a little more of a light effect here. And I'm careful to stay within the lines of this part of the stencil because I'm not trying to do the whole stencil. I just want a certain part of it. And you'll see that it requires some thinking about where you're going with this, because now I have this, just that circular part or teardrop part, and it kind of doesn't demonstrate that line hanging there. So I need to decide what I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is put a little more of that darker on this side, because it's kind of bleeding into the shaded area on this. So I want that to be just a little darker than the side, the part that's in the light. Here we go. And then the other thing I'm thinking is I may just paint that in. So then back in here, I'm going to use a little bit darker color, maybe some of this green gold to bring that. I wanted to bring that into here too, maybe up here. And that kind of brings in the bird. So maybe I'll add some green gold to this. Kind of ties in with the colors I've used down there. And then maybe some of the burnt umber with the green in it. And a little bit of light. Maybe the shape is what we'll do. So it's not a, a rapid kind of thing. You have to be kind of careful how you're applying the paint and where, and give it some thought, because you're not going to move the stencil and disrupt that paint until you're ready. And then I'll take it off. And you can see we have some very subtle images here, which I like. And I'm going to dry that, and then we'll come back and do a little more. We finished adding stencils, and I like to, when I have elements such as these, I like to add an odd number. I just remember in some of my training that, an odd number is always more pleasing than an even number of objects like this. So you may agree with that or not, but that's typically what I do. But you can also see that I've satisfied myself with the composition. I like my darks, I like my lights, I like the contrast of the bird with the light. So I'm pretty happy from that perspective, but I'm not happy yet with how the eye moves around the painting. So we're going to take a look at this and just finish up some last minute touches. Okay, so I've added a few important elements here to help the viewer move their eye around the painting. And what I did was to add red, because red is always an eye attraction. That high contrast is very complimentary. It just makes certain elements pop, and it draws your eye to them. So we've got the red here. We've got red on this lower stencil, and then I just put a little bit of red on the stencil on the left. So I'm satisfied with this. I like my composition, as I've mentioned. I like my contrast for my focal point, and I like the way the viewer's eye is led around the painting by various areas of contrast and value changes and shape changes. So I'm happy, and I'm done. Thanks for watching.